There are houses that sparkle on the surface, gleaming floors, fresh paint, clean lines, and yet the moment you step inside, something tightens in your chest. You can't explain it. It's not what you see, it's what you feel. It's a subtle unease, a quiet tension in the air, as though the space itself is holding its breath. And you might tell yourself it's just in your head, that maybe you're tired or sensitive or imagining things, but you're not, because sometimes what unsettles a home isn't loud. It's architectural, it's energetic. It's something as simple as the direction a doorway faces, or what stands opposite it. In today's reflection, I want to explore something that sounds ordinary, but may quietly shape the emotional weight of your entire living space. A detail so common it's often overlooked. The bathroom that sits directly across from the front door. Yes, just that. But stay with me, because what happens when the place meant to receive life energy is positioned to face the place where energy is meant to be released? And what happens when that configuration, barely noticed, yet constantly active, becomes part of the air you breathe? Before we continue, I want to thank you quietly and sincerely for being here. This channel is small, but what I share here is done with great care. If this kind of content speaks to you, even in a gentle way, I invite you to support this space. One like, one share, or one subscribe may seem simple, but for me, it's the breath that keeps this offering alive. It's the bridge that helps me reach 1,000 kindred followers. And beyond that, the ability to keep offering you more content that nourishes both the home and the heart. So thank you. And now, let's return to the doorway, and to the bathroom, and to what might be flowing between them without you ever realizing it. Part 1. Why the bathroom and front door conflict matters. Imagine for a moment your front door not as an object, but as an opening, a soft threshold between the world outside and the world you call your own. In Feng Shui, this is not just poetic metaphor. It is an energetic law. The front door is known as the mouth of Qi, the main channel through which life force, nourishment, and opportunities are invited into your home. It is the gateway of breath. Every home, like every body, must breathe. It must receive, it must hold, it must circulate, and it must release. But just as an exhale that arrives too early interrupts the rhythm of a breath, the placement of a bathroom directly opposite the front door interrupts the rhythm of the home. Because while the front door is designed to receive, the bathroom is designed to eliminate, to release what no longer serves. And when these two forces, receiving and releasing, are placed in a direct line with nothing in between, the result is not harmony. It is escape. Qi enters and leaves, without nourishing the space in between. At first, this imbalance feels subtle. You may not notice it right away, but over time it builds, like a house that holds warmth but never retains it. Money may come in but disappears just as fast. Conversations may begin but never deepen. Sleep feels less restorative. Relationships become transactional. Life becomes functional but not fulfilling. This is not superstition. This is pattern. This is flow. And when flow is disrupted, it doesn't always scream. Sometimes it sighs, softly, repeatedly, until you finally pause long enough to hear it. Architects in modern cities, especially in apartments and smaller homes, rarely consider this configuration energetically. They think in terms of convenience, plumbing proximity, efficient use of square footage. But energy is not interested in convenience. Energy responds to intention, to direction, and to coherence. The result? We see beautiful, well-furnished homes that feel inexplicably hollow. We hear stories from people who say, things were fine on the surface, but something always felt unsettled. We see individuals succeed professionally but burn out quietly. Couples grow distant without a single argument. Children lose focus. Plants stop growing. Pets become nervous. All of these may seem disconnected, but they are not. They are signs of a space that is not holding. And what we know from both Buddhist wisdom and traditional spatial design is that a space that does not hold cannot heal. Think of a home as a bowl. Its purpose is not just to contain, but to nourish. If that bowl has a hole at the base, no matter how much you pour into it, love, effort, resources, it will not fill. It will leak. And over time, you will begin to feel the drain. Not all at once, not in catastrophe, but in quiet depletion. Let us look at a real-world metaphor. In the tech world, there's a term called leaky funnel. It's used in marketing to describe a system where customers are drawn in, but most disappear before completing a purchase. You attract attention, but it doesn't convert. The business model becomes fragile, not because it lacks value, but because it cannot retain what it receives. The same thing happens in a home with this configuration. You attract energy, opportunity, connection, but the space cannot hold it, and so it slips away. Consider for a moment the home of someone like Steve Jobs. While his minimalist aesthetic was famous, it was not empty. The homes he lived in, particularly later in life, were curated not only for visual clarity, but for energetic flow. Open courtyards, central hearths, pathways that meandered. He understood the value of placement, not just of furniture, but of movement. And this, in many ways, mirrored his creative philosophy. Ideas must flow in, dwell, transform, and then emerge. Not rush through and evaporate. What would have happened if every idea that entered his mind rushed straight out? That's the question we must ask about our homes too. Are we holding what life brings us? Or are we unintentionally structured for loss? A front door directly facing a bathroom creates a structural vulnerability. Not because the house is flawed, but because its breath is cut short. And we feel it, even if we don't yet know how to name it. Part 2, the retired teacher's story. She had spent her entire working life in classrooms, chalk dust on her fingertips, exam papers stacked like towers in quiet corners. Rows of young minds waiting to be moved by something more meaningful than a test score. Her name was Lynn. Students called her the Quiet Flame, because while she rarely raised her voice, something about her presence lingered, a patient steadiness, a way of speaking as if every word had already passed through her heart before reaching her mouth. After 3 decades of teaching literature to teenagers in northern Taiwan, Lynn retired. There was no fanfare, just a simple ceremony, a jasmine-scented cup of tea, and a stack of letters from former students. She smiled, quietly overwhelmed, but already thinking about the next chapter. Retirement to Lynn was not an end, it was an invitation. She imagined long mornings with tea and the poetry of Hanshan. She imagined repotting her orchids, learning to cook slow meals, watching the light move across her walls. There was no longing for travel, no bucket list. She wanted stillness, not silence, but stillness, a rooted kind of peace. So she moved into a modest apartment on the edge of Taichung, a city with slower traffic and more trees. The building was new, with polished tile floors and whitewashed walls. Her unit was on the 3rd floor, facing east, with a small balcony that caught the sunrise. She filled it with basil and lemongrass and one stubborn hibiscus that refused to bloom. Inside, the decor was minimal. 2 worn reading chairs, a low bookshelf, a table for tea. Her walls bore calligraphy gifted by a former student. Let the mind settle like water in a bowl. And yet, something didn't settle. Not right away, but slowly. It began with fatigue, not exhaustion. Lynn had known the weariness of grading papers deep into the night. This was different. It was a kind of heaviness in her limbs that she couldn't explain. She would sit with a book, read the same paragraph 3 times, and still forget what it said. Then came the sleep, or rather, the lack of it. She would fall asleep easily, but wake at strange hours, the world outside her window dark and still. Sometimes she would sit on her couch at 3 a.m., watching the shadows shift across the walls, feeling alert and yet disconnected. As if her body were in the apartment, but her spirit was somewhere else. Her appetite changed. Her orchid stopped blooming. Her hibiscus withered. The bathroom light flickered. She changed the bulb. It flickered again. Her skin itched, though there was no rash. Her thoughts looped in circles. And then there were the small expenses. A broken pipe, an overcharged bill, a phone repair. Nothing catastrophic, just enough to drain the little sense of ease she'd been hoping to cultivate. She told herself this was adjustment, that she missed the rhythm of school bells, that she was simply unused to solitude. But somewhere inside, a quieter voice asked, What if it's not me? One morning while sweeping near the front door, Lynn paused. She looked up and noticed something she hadn't truly seen before. From the very spot where she stood, she could see directly into the bathroom. There was no wall, no turn, no threshold, just a straight, unbroken line from entrance to exit, from receiving to release. At that moment, something clicked, not logically, energetically. She didn't have the words for it yet, but she felt it in her chest. This apartment wasn't broken, but it wasn't holding her either. Later that week, she called her cousin, an architect turned energy consultant who had once studied under a traditional Feng Shui master in the countryside. She didn't expect miracles. She just wanted someone to walk the space with her, someone who would listen to what she couldn't quite say. Her cousin arrived quietly. No incense, no compass, just a gentle attentiveness. He moved through the space like someone reading a poem, not analyzing a floor plan. He stood near the door for a long time, then near the window, then in the center of the apartment, eyes closed. When he finally spoke, he said only this: "This apartment breathes in but doesn't keep anything." He explained that the energy entering through her front door was strong, but it had no place to circulate, no invitation to linger. It was moving straight through, out the bathroom door, out the window. Her home was beautiful, but energetically porous. "It's like trying to hold water in cupped hands," he said. "The water doesn't judge you, but it will leave." They made only 3 changes. First, they added a partition, a sheer linen curtain that hung from a wooden rod across the hallway, softening the visual corridor between the door and the bathroom. Light could still pass through, but energy would now be slowed, invited to turn, to dwell, to rest. Second, Lynn placed a tall bamboo plant beside the bathroom door. She watered it daily, spoke to it, and watched as its stalk straightened, almost proudly. And third, they introduced warm light, a low lamp in the corner near the entryway, a beeswax candle on the bathroom counter. No bright overheads, just pockets of glow, like the kind one finds in temples at dusk. That was all. There were no chants, no crystals, no charms, just intention. Within a few weeks, Lynn began sleeping more deeply. Her hibiscus sprouted 3 new leaves. She found herself cooking again, not out of duty, but out of joy. She reconnected with a former student who now ran a small press and began editing poetry manuscripts from her balcony in the mornings. And most tellingly, she stopped checking her phone at 3 a.m. because for the first time in a long while, she felt like her spirit had returned home. When asked later if she believed in Feng Shui, she smiled. "I believe in listening," she said, "and in small corrections. The world doesn't need to be rearranged, but sometimes the way we face the door matters." This story is not about superstition, it's about subtle structure. It's about how even well-intentioned homes, clean, quiet, beautiful, can unintentionally create flow patterns that don't serve us. And it's about how, through attention, through softness, through care, we can invite those patterns to shift. Because sometimes healing doesn't begin with grand change. It begins with a curtain, a plant, a willingness to see what was always there, and a space that says, not in words but in presence, you are allowed to stay. Part 3. What actually goes wrong in these homes? You wouldn't think something as simple as a layout, a front door directly aligned with a bathroom, could matter so much. It sounds innocent, ordinary. In fact, in most modern apartments and suburban townhomes, this configuration is almost a default. But if you've ever lived in a house like this, you know the feeling doesn't stay ordinary for long. It begins subtly, as it always does. You might chalk it up to a stressful week, or aging, or Mercury retrograde if that's your language. But something shifts in the atmosphere. Not loud, not catastrophic, just a little off. A conversation that used to flow easily now feels effortful. A decision you should have made last week keeps getting postponed. There's food in the fridge, but no appetite. You keep spending on little things, but your bank account never seems to reflect your effort. You sleep, but wake up more tired than before. None of these are problems on their own, but together they begin to sketch the outline of a deeper imbalance. This is how spatial disharmony works. It's not a thunderclap, it's a quiet drip. The bathroom, in symbolic language, represents release. It is where waste is removed, where moisture condenses and drains, where the body and space alike shed what is no longer needed. In Feng Shui, the bathroom is a place of downward energy. It pulls. The front door, as we've explored, is a portal of invitation. It receives the world. It ushers in freshness, possibility, newness. But when you place those two opposing forces in a straight line, with nothing in between, the invitation collapses into the release. What enters is not welcomed. It is immediately dismissed. Energy does not circulate. It escapes. And the consequences, while invisible, are deeply lived. Financially, this can look like a pattern of small losses. Not ruin, but attrition. Bills for things you didn't anticipate. An appliance that breaks and gets fixed, only to break again. A raise at work, quickly offset by unexpected costs. You may be working harder than ever, and yet your savings never grow. It's not bad luck, it's energetic inefficiency. Emotionally, you may feel that people in the home have grown distant. Communication becomes shallow. Not hostile, just detached. Family members pass each other more than they interact. The dining table is used less. Conversations are shorter. Laughter is rarer. A home like this doesn't create conflict. It creates quiet, but not the peaceful kind. The kind that feels a little hollow. Energetically, you might feel a low-grade restlessness. You change the furniture, you burn incense. You try different morning routines, but the fatigue lingers. You may go to bed early, only to wake at 3 a.m. with a racing mind. Or you wake up feeling unready, no matter how long you sleep. Even plants respond to this, especially the sensitive ones. Peace lilies, orchids, ferns. You water them, you care for them. But they droop anyway, not because of sunlight, because of stagnation. They breathe the same chi you do. And children? Children often reflect the energy of a space even more directly than adults. In homes with this layout, you may see them become more withdrawn, more easily irritated. Sleep routines shift. Focus decreases. They start and stop activities more quickly. The attention doesn't stick. All of this can be explained, of course, by other means. That's what makes spatial energy so often misunderstood. It's always easier to blame the job, the screen time, the weather. But when you change the layout and the patterns change with it, you begin to understand something deeper has been at play all along. And here's the key insight. This layout doesn't block abundance. It simply fails to hold it. You may get the promotion, you may meet someone new, you may even win something unexpectedly, but it won't last. It slips. Not because you're unworthy, but because the space you live in is not structured to help you receive, integrate, and retain. It's like trying to collect rain in a bowl with a crack at the bottom. You'll still feel the freshness for a moment, but it will not nourish, not deeply. In Buddhist teaching, we sometimes speak of the 6 conditions that support growth. Of these, one is called upaya, skillful means. It refers to the intelligent application of what you know in the way that most benefits your specific situation. And in this context, understanding the flow of energy in your home is a form of upaya, a skillful adjustment, not a dramatic gesture, but a subtle refinement that allows your life to hold what it receives. Because what's the use of welcoming in new energy if your home is shaped to let it leave? Take, for instance, the experience of a senior executive I once spoke with, a woman leading a fast-growing fintech company in the Pacific Northwest. She had just moved into a new high-rise, beautifully designed, modern to the last detail. Her balcony faced the water. The kitchen was pristine. But the front door? It opened directly toward a sleek, marble-clad bathroom. Within 3 months, she began noticing patterns. Her top managers began leaving unexpectedly. Funding for her new product line stalled. She developed a recurring tightness in her chest, something her doctor said was stress. Her sleep broke into segments, early sleep, then long hours staring at the ceiling between 2 and 5 a.m. She didn't believe in Feng Shui, but she believed in data. And when all else failed, when nutrition, therapy, and coaching didn't resolve the edge she felt inside her home, she was willing to try something different. So she made 2 changes. She hung a tall, lightweight partition between the bathroom and the hallway, and she placed a large ceramic vase with eucalyptus branches directly in the line of sight from the front door. She didn't think it would do anything. But within a week, her sleep deepened. Within a month, one of her key team members asked to return to the company. Within a season, her shoulders began to relax in a way she hadn't felt in years. She never became a Feng Shui devotee. She just started listening. That's the power of alignment, not in a metaphysical way, but in a practical one. When space supports function, energy flows naturally, and you don't have to fight for ease. You just have to stop leaking it. Part 4. Practical Feng Shui adjustments. When it comes to energy, most people imagine dramatic rituals, wind chimes, red ribbons, compasses and crystals, and chants. But in truth, the most powerful shifts rarely come from the loudest actions. They come from alignment, from the quiet intelligence of doing something, small, symbolic, but intentional, that allows energy to pause, to breathe, and to redirect itself with purpose. This is especially true when correcting the front door bathroom conflict. The solution is not demolition. It's not about panic or urgency. It's about remembering that even a stream redirected by a stone will eventually carve a new path. The first step is to interrupt the straight line. In a home where the bathroom door is directly opposite the main entrance, the simplest and most effective adjustment is to create a visual and energetic barrier between them. This can take many forms: a sheer curtain or fabric screen, a folding partition made of natural material like wood or rice paper, even a tall bookshelf open on both sides, positioned in a way that slows the momentum of energy traveling from the door straight into the bathroom. You are not blocking the energy. You are inviting it to stay a little longer. Think of it like hosting a guest. When someone walks through your front door, you don't point them directly to the exit. You offer them tea. You show them to a seat. You create space for them to feel welcomed. That's what a partition does. It gives energy a moment to linger. The second step is to soften the transition. Most bathrooms are filled with materials that echo hardness: tile, porcelain, mirror, metal. This is functional, yes, but energetically it creates an environment of sharpness, reflection, and quick movement. To counter this, bring in warmth. A small rug in earth tones, wooden trays for organizing items, warm indirect lighting, a candle, not always lit but present, a plant that thrives in moisture like pothos, bamboo, or peace lily, placed near the door or even on a floating shelf inside. These items are not decorations. They are symbols of care, and care is energy that returns. And then, of course, there is scent. Bathrooms carry the natural scent of water and cleansing agents. But when you introduce grounding scents, cedar, sandalwood, frankincense, you change the tone of the space, not just for guests, but for yourself. You begin to associate this place of release, not just with absence, but with rest. Remember, in Feng Shui, the bathroom is not bad. It simply needs to be supported. Just as an exhale is not dangerous, it is essential, but if done too early, without first drawing a full breath, the body weakens. Now let's turn to the entrance itself. Your front door is not just an architectural necessity, it is the handshake of your home. And like any good introduction, it should feel intentional. One of the most overlooked details is the space just inside the front door. Many people treat it as a hallway, a place to pass through. But in truth, this is where Qi decides whether it will stay. To anchor this moment, place something grounding and beautiful near the door. A small bench, a vase with cut branches, a textured mat, a bowl of smooth river stones. These are not Feng Shui cures, they are visual invitations. They say to the energy, you are welcome here. Come in, stay. It's not about cluttering the entryway, it's about offering it purpose. If you're drawn to symbolic items, this is also a place for them. In Buddhist households, you might find a small painting of a Bodhi leaf or a hand-drawn Enso circle, an expression of completeness within imperfection. In other traditions, it might be a talisman, a meaningful photo, a stone picked up during a walk that reminded you of stillness. What matters is that it feels alive, that it isn't random, that it carries memory and meaning. And finally, there is the door to the bathroom itself. Close it. This may sound too simple to be effective, but leaving a bathroom door open, especially when it directly faces the entrance, is an energetic invitation to release what you have not yet received. It's like throwing out groceries before cooking, like discarding a letter before reading it. A closed door is not rejection, it is containment. If you'd like to amplify this, you can place a small mirror on the inside of the door, not for vanity, but for reflection. Not to show your face, but to catch light, so that even when the door is closed, the energy within is softly refracted, not absorbed. Some Feng Shui practitioners also recommend placing a crystal just above the door frame, clear quartz or citrine, believing it helps refract energy. But I will say this, more important than the crystal is the care with which you place it. Energy responds not to objects, but to attention. That's the real practice here. You are not fighting your home, you are partnering with it. When you shift a hallway from a passage to a pause point, when you soften a harsh tile with a wooden shelf, when you place a small light where there was once only shadow, you are making a choice. You are saying quietly, I am ready to hold what I welcome. And that, more than any object, symbol, or instruction, is what makes energy shift. Because in the end, the home does not need to be perfect. It needs to be coherent, aligned, thoughtful, alive, and so do we. There's a quiet kind of wisdom in paying attention to the things most people overlook. Like the way your body exhales when you step into a certain room. Like how your houseplants lean toward the light, if there is light. Or how something as unassuming as the layout between a door and a bathroom could gently shape the tone of your daily life over time, like water smoothing stone. Today's reflection wasn't about superstition. It wasn't about fear. It was about flow, about the breath of a home, about what it means to receive and hold. Not just guests or income or new ideas, but yourself. When we create space that honors the cycles of energy, entry, rest, release, return, we stop chasing stability. We begin living inside of it. And so wherever you live, whether your home is large or small, new or old, temporary or rooted, I hope this helped you see it a little differently. Not as a fixed structure, but as a living environment. One that responds to care. One that listens when you listen to it. Because sometimes the most powerful change isn't about doing more. It's about noticing what you've been living with and deciding to shift just one small thing. A curtain, a plant, a light turned on at dusk, and slowly, gently, something begins to hold again. If this video offered you something to reflect on, if it stirred a quiet recognition in your own space or story, I invite you to take a moment with me. If it inspired you, I warmly welcome you to share it with someone who might need it. Leave a comment with your experience. I would love to hear how your space has spoken to you. And if you'd like to walk this journey together, I'd be deeply grateful if you subscribe to New Day Mindfulnesses. Your presence here helps me reach my first 1,000 followers. And more importantly, it allows me to continue sharing these slow, sincere reflections with you and with others who are quietly seeking the same. Until our next moment together, may your space be kind, may your energy be steady, and may your life, like your home, become a place that not only receives but remembers how to hold.